people join because maybe they want to strengthen their minds and bodies, learn techniques, stay focused, get fit. Essentially, we start off on the physical. We need to understand that side of things. We need to get our bodies strong, like the Kung Fu masters or the Shaolin Temple. All starts with that physicalness. And then you become one with the movement, if I can put it that way. Ancients believed if your chi is really strong, and how do we get it strong? Through Qi-Gong exercises or Tai Chi exercises. My injury was from karate tournament, and it was really a bad one where my patella kneecap totally dislocated. It went from the front of the leg across to the side, and my leg got bent. And the doctors are telling me this is not good. Let's do some surgery. I was reluctant, and that's when I approached my dad again, and I said, okay, well, I need to do some Qigong and some Tai Chi, even though I'm almost unable to do it without crutches. Long story short, months went by, probably like talking maybe 8 months, and I began to feel a change in my leg, and more so a change in my whole being.
Greetings, seekers of ancient wisdom. Here find teachings to enter God's kingdom. Natural ways, that is what we uncover, to live life aligned, sister and brother. Today we learn from Sensei Ming. Tai Chi and Karate he knows how to sing. When younger he fought in many a ring. Now his focus is martial art teaching. Tai Chi is ancient and full of rich history. Learn to control the life force mystery. In the East, they call this Chi mastery. Awaken your force and enjoy life victory. Studying martial arts, benefits are many. Confidence and strength, your aura turns shiny. Building inward power, fire and fury, students experience the yin-yang theory. Okay, I promise now my little intro is done. Sensei Ming, we're ready for karate fun. So, Sensei Ming, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Deepak. Thanks for having me.
So, Mr. Ming, tell us how you got into martial arts, because I understand it's been 5 decades or more than 5 decades that you've been practicing or teaching martial arts, which is, yeah, seriously a lot of experience. So tell us the journey.
Thanks. You can just call me Leo. Leo is good. Essentially, as a kid, I was always interested in martial arts and, the Bruce Lee era and watching all those movies. And in those days, there weren't many clubs, karate clubs or Tai Chi. In fact, Tai Chi probably none. Karate clubs, few and far between. And so I started mimicking some of the movements at home. And my parents saw that, well, I've got this interest. And a friend of ours had already joined up a dojo in the south of Joburg. And essentially, I went for a class and I loved it. And that's how my interest and training started.
And then I guess you just continued with it. Is that right? So it just became part of your lifestyle.
Essentially, I started training. I loved it, and we just kept going, kept going. You know, as I say, probably if there were other variations of the martial arts, I would have landed up maybe in a different style, or but not that it was bad for me, it was great. And so I started at officially when I trained at home, it was between the ages of 7, 8, somewhere there. But officially, when I started at the dojo at the karate club at the age of 13, continued from there, just training and trying to achieve greater inner capabilities. And I just loved the whole thinking behind it, the philosophy behind it, and the fun part with the competitions. We had competitions all over the country. Sometimes travelled down to the Free State in those days and all other parts of the country, competing in provincial, in clubs, and then later on in essays. So that was really, yeah, it shaped the path, shaped the way. And eventually, I'm talking 20 years down the line, I felt that I needed something more. And I spoke to my instructor about it. And I said, I did some research and I mentioned him. There was another club that did some karate as well, weaponry. And eventually I joined that club. Obviously, he was sad to see me go, but I just needed to get more, to want insight into the other part of it, which was not only physical, but maybe the mental and the spiritual endeavor, the Tao, the way, and explored that side of the martial arts, which is really, I think it's quite important. I think it's probably, if not more important than the physical. The physical is a important aspect, obviously, but maybe when you reach a certain time, there needs to be as well a meditative, if you want to call it, a spiritual, another avenue, another route, which ultimately, up the tree, there's different branches, but we endeavor to uplift and ourselves and others around us. And then I started, well, during the initial stages as well, once I reached brown and black belt, I started teaching already. So by the time I had left the first club, I was teaching, but part time, because it was essentially, uh, I trained with programming, computer programming. So I was doing that and then training at night. But in my head, as a dream, as a goal, I always wanted to pursue instruction and imparting knowledge and teaching kids, teaching adults, which is what I do now.
Wow, wow, that's really cool. So I have a lot of questions, but I want to start off with the first one that popped into my head is the different styles of martial art, because you sort of touched on it a little bit. So what style did you start off with? Because I guess the dojo that was close to your house, you didn't get to choose. It was just the dojo that happened to be there, and the style they taught was the style you learned. And yeah, so my question is, what are the different major styles and how do they differ in martial arts?
Initially, I'm talking in many hundreds of years ago, in Okinawa, which was the birthplace of karate, as it's known, there wasn't actually styles. There weren't styles. They were just a place where one could train methods of self-defense and methods of um, enhancing oneself, and techniques and getting stronger and being able to focus one's mind and breathing. So it was just essentially a gathering, a hall where they gathered and they would train. They'd have all sorts of ancient equipment, not like the gymming that we have these days and the pulleys and the fancy Pilates balls. And they would have just basically very basic equipment. Some are made of concrete where you would lift it and increase your power and strength. Essentially, it wasn't until it got modernized and maybe for America, whereby it got it got put into categories. Okay, you're a white belt, so you are beginner, you are yellow, and then you could go into another different different techniques, higher techniques, and then orange. And so they sort of standardized and divided it up, and then started giving names to different styles. So this person would give an instruction, and he called it Shotokan, which is like the kan meaning hall, Shoto being his surname. So let's say Ming's Hall or Ming's Dojo. And that's how things became stylized, the different styles. Essentially, in Okinawa, if you kind of picture the island, you there's a northern and a central and southern area. And a lot of the southern techniques or the southern styles blend into their surroundings. In other words, the southerners were maybe more fishing kind of people, and they would go out on boats. And whereas the northern areas would be very mountainous, so they would climb a lot. They would use their legs to climb up mountains and travel to and from work. And so when you look at the types of styles, generally the northerners are really good with power of legs because they're used to climbing, and they're like the Sherpas of today. So they would just run up the hill, very strong, very agile. That blended into their techniques, or they molded their techniques to suit themselves essentially. Whereas, let's say, the Southerners would be, as I said, more fishermen on boats. They would have good balance. They would fish while on the boats. They would pull in nets. They use a lot of their arms, casting nets, pulling in. So they would have a lot of techniques adapted around that sort of pulling motion, or around their type of, what they do well. So they were strong on the upper. And then in between, they would have a fusion of both. So essentially, even today, you'll find there's styles that come from North, and even with Kung Fu and Southern. And then there's also a crossover with karate and Kung Fu, the Chinese Kung Fu. Karate, today it's known as Japanese art, but essentially it's Okinawan, which is kind of in between, the island in between. And a person by the name of Gichin Funakoshi took the martial art from Okinawa, learned and took it to Japan, where he structured it, he formalized it, and he made it accessible for children, adults alike, for ease of learning. So he broke down a lot of the complex moves and made them really fairly simple for the average layperson to learn. And that's how it got across to Japan. And knowing the Japanese, they're very they're very structured people. They're very precise and structured. Whereas the Okinawans, this is a cultural thing as well, where the styles became fitting, they fitted into that culture. So when you take something away and you are born Japanese, you teach it in a way that's maybe more Japanese, right? You'll teach it in a structured way. You'll teach it in a formal way. There's a lot of bowing. There's a lot of etiquette. There's all that kind of thing. Whereas in Okinawa, if you've ever been, if you go to a dojo, you know people will come if the training is 6 in the morning. If you come at 6:30, 6:15, that's fine. You just come, you'll join the class. Whereas in Japan, if it starts at 6, you better be there at 6. That's the discipline. So it's very regimented, maybe that's a word, in that way, even now down the line. And then you get the Chinese influence, which is also more, I would say it's more Okinawan because it's um, it's more relaxed. So, for example, in China, if because I do Tai Chi as well, if they taught you Tai Chi, they'd, let's say, teach you a movement or two, they would say, okay, this is the movement, do it a few times, do it. I will be here, the teacher will be here, and they'll just watch you maybe from afar. They might attend to a couple other people, and it's very kind of informal, and you just keep on doing it. Okay. You might do one technique for like an hour or 2 hours, one technique. And if the teacher sees that you're diligent and sees that you are willing to learn, he'll think about teaching you. Otherwise, because they wouldn't have normally shared their secrets because it's a family thing. So, like pretty much like Tai Chi, how the styles develop, and we'll get into that now, the different styles, they were closed to that family. So they'd only teach their sons. So the master will teach their sons or his sons, and or the daughter-in-law. Why the daughter-in-law? Because when she gets married, she stays in the family. Whereas the son, when they get married, they go out. They gone. They leave the house. So in that way, it was quite closed, and only trusted students would learn the secrets. And so it got passed down the line. So with Tai Chi, which I as well teach our teacher that, we have different styles as well. And essentially a similar, it's similar, you all training to lead up to this enlightened path at the top, but you have a slightly different way of doing. That style has a slightly different way. That style is a little bit quicker, faster. That technique is a little bit flowery. This is less flowery. So also that's quite interesting because it also blends in to one misinterpretation. So it gets interpreted differently. Two, maybe habit or not understanding the movement fully. And then this happens today, and then people teach. And when they teach, they'll teach it in this particular way that they think is it's done, but it's misunderstood, and then they lose slightly the essence of it. So habit, misinterpretation, and as well maybe people body types. So let's say, for example, the person may not be able to do splits, and or they've got a back problem and they can't do a certain, so they'll shy away a little bit from that technique, which hurts them. So it can be that that can happen. So that technique has slightly different feel to its original meaning or way. So yeah, those are, and then in Tai Chi, there's 4 or 5 different styles. We have Yang, which by far the most popular worldwide because of its accessibility, ease of learning, um, for the layperson. And then we have Chen, which is you can see it's more martial. There's faster moves. There's fists involved, whereas the others are just open-handed mainly. There's Sun, there's How, there's Wu. So again, they all the thinking and the philosophy lead to one place, but different methods. It's like yoga, essentially, hatha, ayanga, you know, vinyasa, all the different types, you know.
No, it's fascinating that the karate you say sort of originated in Okinawa, and Tai Chi had its origins more in China, I think, and then the culture, the environment, the way people did things, that sort of dictated how that martial art developed, you know. And today, like you said, there's five major Tai Chi styles, and in karate, there's probably five or many many of different styles. But I wanted to get into the real crux of it because you mentioned that these martial arts, the bigger benefit that you enjoyed and that people enjoy is the spiritual benefits. And this is very different to the perception that we have, especially in the West, right? Because growing up watching karate movies and Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee and those famous celebrities, it was always the physical attributes that was attractive to us as children and probably attractive to the public. Like, wow, this man can use his fists and legs and knees and beat up 10 people or beat up people much bigger than him. And it was just mesmerizing. But you're saying that that's actually not really the main benefit. Yes, there is some physical benefits, but the main benefit, the real crux, and the main reason people stick with it is for that spiritual enlightenment. So I'm curious to understand, how does martial arts help with spiritual work?
So there's a two-part question there. Yes, essentially, people join because maybe they want to strengthen their minds and bodies, learn techniques, stay focused, get fit, allow the body to have relaxation, a state of relaxation as well. So you learn all those techniques while you're doing it. And then, as well for me, like I mentioned earlier on, I needed more. It needed, for me, there was something else missing. So, yes, people start like that. So, essentially, there's a bit of a backdate story. When I entered tournaments, I sustained a really bad injury when I was in my 20s. The doctors had a look and kind of shook their heads, but I was determined and I wanted to carry on. One of the reasons was having the will to carry on, but then what do I do now? My leg it's useless. It was injured. I needed still to train. That's when I essentially looked at the softer styles. So Tai Chi, Singyi, and Bagua are all known as internal styles because they are one softer, not necessary in some cases, but they focus on internals, your internal attributes. So you have your physical, you gym, you get strong, you punch, you kick, and then how to sustain that internal mental and inner workings. I looked at Tai Chi, but if I can backtrack a little before that, what happened also was my dad, in those days, there wasn't really Tai Chi schools. My dad had been training Tai Chi with a person that came over from overseas. And this was at the Chinese school. And one night he took me with and he said, "We're going to do some Tai Chi." and I didn't really know what it was. But when I got there, I saw all these people doing things really slowly, circular, gentle. It was quiet, and it was very different to what I was used to or to what I saw. And I couldn't really understand it. I tried to find out more, but essentially, I wasn't mature enough. I wasn't really mature enough to understand it. It was esoteric. It didn't look like it had meaning because the hands just were waving around. The bodies was moving. They were gesturing, but it just almost was like, yeah, it was just like a slow dance to me. And after the class, I did train with him for a bit. He made me do some techniques. I stood in a meditative position. It's called standing like a tree, where you just stand shoulder width. You circle the arms in front of your chest, and you just breathe. You can have your eyes half closed, and you just breathe. It's a meditation, and it's a leg strengthening technique. What seemed like for hours, it was probably like 2 minutes long. But for a young boy, it seemed like forever. And I really thought, no, I don't want to do this. I want to do something more active, more exciting. I want to do something with kicks and punches. And so that's when I decided, okay, karate is the thing. And that's when I joined the karate club in the south of Joburg. By the way, that instructor is still alive. I talked to him. He moved down to Durban. He's in his late 70s, 80s now. And we have a very good relationship. And so getting back to your question, is essentially we start off on the physical. We need to understand that side of things. We need to get our bodies strong, like the Kung Fu masters or the Shaolin Temple. All starts with that physicalness. And then you eventually go to a space where your movements become really, you become one with the movement, if I can put it that way, without sounding too esoteric. You do the movement without thought. It's got full power, it's got full speed. You are totally immersed in that movement. Nothing else exists around you. You live that piece of kata or Tai Chi form. You are that form. You embody that form. That's when things start to change. That's when things start to become different, for lack of a better word. Different in the sense that you exceed your physicalness. And with that, there's a insight into what it's like to maybe meditate. While you're doing these movements, you're one with, right? So if you're in the sea and you're swimming and you're striking the water, trying to swim ahead, you're not really with, you're not blending into the movement of the water. Whereas if you look at swimmers, professional swimmers, how they glide through the water, that's maybe an example. That's being one with your substance around you. And our substance is all of what we have every day, the nature around us. A person on a horse, if you look at the beginner, they're not, they're not with the horse. They don't stride with the horse. It's a bit jerky and it's a bit ungainly. When you are a professional rider, you can see those people, they just flow. The horse is part of them. They part of the horse. They communicating almost with the horse without pulling and pushing the horse. So maybe that's a glimpse as to it's an analogy to the same that happens when you transform the kata, the form, and you go into the next phase. Let's call it. So that's the start. I would say that's a way of looking at it. That's a start of entering that realm where, it's almost difficult to put into words. Yeah, where you are one. You are one with your surroundings. You are so not, it's not about concentrating. Concentrating means if you if you look at something hard, that's not concentrating. Concentrating is just being very relaxed, but at the same time, seeing everything around you and seeing yourself. Everything becomes, it's almost like that lens of the camera. You're focused and then you just take it slightly out of focus and you can see everything but nothing in particular.
Wow, that's really good to understand, right? So it's good to see that the discipline focuses on the physical body first, getting the body strong. And as the student does this consistently for a long time, they become one with the movements, and that sort of is is the beginnings, I guess, of the spiritual understanding, right? Then understanding how everything is connected, being one with the environment, meditating. So it's beautiful how they've structured it in a way, or it ended up being this sort of way that doing something consistently.
Just, yeah, sorry. Something comes to mind as well. Like there's an art called Kyoto, which is the art of the arrow. Essentially, you hold the bow, you draw the bow at the target, and you release it. But the idea is not for the bullseye. It's not anything to do with the target. It's to do with yourself, to do with your target within you. So when you see the archers doing that, they take a deep breath, they draw the bow, they're ready, and then they release. You release it when you release it. It's not, you don't release it and you aim and you kind of, it's about just being relaxed and being focused and not concentrated on a particular bullseye. You release it when it's time to be released. And whether you hit the target, whether you get bullseye, that's not the. So it's a total mind switch a little bit from maybe the goals that we set ourselves today, which is quite pressured. In corporate, everywhere, you got to win that race. You got to become first, second, or third. Third, not good. Second, maybe better. First. That's really good. So our goals, having set goals, we almost lose the essence of what it's meant to be. Yeah. So things like that are of interest because obviously it's not about hitting bullseye. I always say to my students, you train. So here we go with the belts again: white, yellow, orange. That's goals, right? That's good. Don't get me wrong. It's good to have goals, to set goals, because it gives you a purpose. It gives you, by a certain time, I want to be there. But if you can do that at the same time without having it being a crutch, without having, sometimes the goals are unreachable. We set them, but we forget that maybe, is that realistic? Is it reachable? And are we, the most important, are we losing sight of the way? So I always like the Tao because it encompasses that whole philosophy of Tao means essentially the way, the path, the Tao of Pru. Okay, don't know if you've read the book, but essentially there's so much in it that one can take from. Part of my book that I've published, it's the Tai Chi book, it revolves around the Tao as well. There's sayings of the Tao, and things like an empty vessel. What makes it useless is the emptiness. Okay, if the vessel is just solid, what can we put inside? Things like empty your mind before you can fill it. You can't expect to go join a club and you've done maybe some martial arts and you join a club and you've got this mindset that that was what you've been taught. You can't absorb anything if you've got that attitude. So it's an attitude thing. But if you let go of those preconceived ideas, empty your mind, like Bruce Lee says. Okay? Be shapeless, be formless, be like water, because water can flow, water can crash. It takes shape, it takes the form of cracks. It fills up. It when a mass water, it's beautiful. When a mass, it'll take your house down. We know that. With a stream of water, it'll flow into the crack. Later on, it breaks up the crack. It gets bigger. Such a soft element, such a powerful thing.
Yeah, wow, that's really cool. So let's get deeper into the key, the word key in Tai Chi. What is key? Because I understand it to be the reference to the life force energy. In India, they talk of prana, which is what they refer to as the life force energy. But maybe you can give us a bit more background into ki, and then how does Tai Chi fit into that? I guess they're teaching you to use your life force energy.
Yeah. So where do I start? Chi, and it's spelled differently. You'll see in my book maybe the G. It's the same. It's one and the same. It's just the pronunciation because Chinese language is so complex and there's so many dialects. Probably about 50 something dialects in China, of which Mandarin is the most popular, Cantonese and Hakka and Moyanese. But it's just essentially the way it's pronounced. It's the same, and you are right. It's your vital energy, your vital spirit that runs through your body. It's like the electricity through those lines, through those power lines. The ancients believed if your chi is really strong, and how do we get it strong? Through Qi-Gong exercises or Tai Chi exercises. If it's strong, your vital force is good. In other words, it has good energy in within you to balance your whole system out. And when I'm talking system, I'm talking mind, body, organs. We're talking internal. And that's why we come to those three internal, softer aspects, Tai Chi being one of them. So you build up, you try to build up, the idea is to try to be aware and build up the energy within us. We all have chi, otherwise we wouldn't be here. The 12 meridians that run in the body, you speak to acupuncturists, they'll tell you, and specific meridians control specific organs. Organs play a big role in internal martial arts as well as medicine. These two are paramount to learning internal arts as well as in Eastern medicine. Okay, you'll see when you go to an acupuncturist, if you have a headache, maybe the chi is trapped or the chi can't flow because you tightened up. We tense, we lift our shoulders, we learn to and breathe and relax. So they would then insert into various areas of the body where the chi flows. So let's say you have a lung problem, asthma. They're not necessarily going to go into the lung physical, what we Westerners think as lung. Okay, here, up here. They might put it in your um, dragon mouth area or L8 or whatever, the lung meridian along the finger to open up the lung meridian. So it really goes in deep, and I'm not a doctor, so but essentially that's what they would do. In other words, because you have this stomach ache, they're not going to go to the stomach necessarily. They might do the foot because it leads to the stomach, or there's a line there that's blocked that doesn't allow the energy to go to the stomach. Okay, so it's indirect in that way. So with yoga, like you mentioned, prana, with in Japanese, your ki, they would use Reiki, a method of channeling chi from your surrounds by use of palm or hand to the other person. So it's a universal force that exists in your body that keeps you that keeps the light bulb on, and that we need to in order to live our daily lives. We just want to enhance it by various methods of breathing. And then there's what's the word? There's a byproduct, maybe not even a byproduct of, oh, we're breathing as well. Oh, we're using relaxation as well. We are gaining just by maybe we want to enhance the chi. There's good advantage byproducts of that.
No, so I am familiar with some of the stuff because I practice reflexology, and reflexology just by stimulating and a special kind of massage on the base of the foot, of the person, they understood somehow that the meridians go to the foot and there's certain junction points. So by hitting a certain point on the base of the foot, you can stimulate the lung meridian or heart meridian or liver or any of these organs can be stimulated and opened up through reflexology. And acupuncture seems similar to that. They're just using needles and they're going into certain points. But I'm just amazed that in ancient times, right? In ancient times, how could they even know about this key and this life force energy? I mean, it's truly wise. I mean, today we have all the technology and equipment and machinery, and we can measure these tiny electrical pulses and magnetic fields. But the Western approach hasn't understood key, but thousands of years ago, they understood about this internal life force energy and the practices. So you said like Tai Chi, the practice of Tai Chi is to improve your chi, improve your life force energy, make it bigger and stronger, and that enables yourself to be healthier. So my question is actually going to lead on to, I saw on YouTube there's a guy who has a qigong channel, and he says that he had an accident 20 or 30 years ago, very serious accident. Doctors said he was paralyzed or partially paralyzed, but he used Qigong, and he claims he used Qigong to heal himself, to heal his body. Like, how's that possible? That sounds a bit far-fetched, right? I mean, surely that's...
I think you can take it with a pinch of salt, and sometimes without knowing, subconsciously, you may have even used your chi, but without knowing that it, because you maybe one, not necessarily you, one is not necessarily thinking all about chi all the time. If you're ill as well, um, if your chi would have been low, and that's why you got ill in the first place, and you're susceptible to. bacteria and all sorts of things, and then eventually your chi starts to build up, and so essentially, yes, you've healed with the help of a little bit of medication, homeopathic needles, but needles. So let's say you are sick, you go to acupuncturist. They may just stimulate some of the acupuncture points, twist the needle a little bit, put some moxa on top of the needle, burn the moxa, and it'll help that chi start to generate again. So simple things like that. So it depends on how ill the person was, and like I say, you may have even had that without realizing it, and sometimes you do realize it. But what I've personally noticed that in the years that I've trained, that with a better vitality, one tends to when you get sick, and I haven't been sick for a really long time, touch wood, but when you get sick, it there's a different feel to the body, and I tend to almost recognize it before it when it's in the body. When something's amiss, I'm I'm not sick, but I'm feeling not 100%. I know something's wrong, and then maybe 3 days later, oh, here it comes. I can feel something. So that is maybe a it heightens your whole sense of being as well. Your chi can do really many things, and so we're not talking magical, you know, out of this world stuff, but just something small like that. You can already, I can already sense. Okay, I'm not. There's something not right, but I don't know what it is. I feel good. Still, I'm not tired. I'm sleeping well, but and then a couple of days later, oh, my stomach's actually, that was what it was. So things like that. And then also your recovery time, my recovery time seems to be quicker. And that's really, it's the small things that really count. So, for example, this is more physical thing. I teach some of the aged people at senior living, and what they noticed, or what some of them noticed, was wow, I can actually start balancing on one leg and tie my other shoelace with the knee up. I never used to do that before. I mean, that for the elderly, that's amazing. That's really profound for them. We take it for granted. We until we get an injury and we think, oh, my hand doesn't work properly. I can't button my shirt. Small things like that are actually quite, because you lose your whole function just without your thumb or your finger. Then you realize your thumb is really that important. But yeah, I'm a little bit off track now. But getting back to your question, essentially, we all have chi. We try to use it. We try to have a better state of being, a state of mind. It keeps you functioning better throughout the day. You don't get that slump at 1, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that can be as well attributed to other things like your diet, your stress level. But, it's all holistic. Um, and yeah.
So Leo, you alluded to having an injury in your 20s, right? Quite a serious injury, and I think you mentioned like your leg was injured, and then you got more into Tai Chi. I think you were alluding to somehow Tai Chi helping in your recovery. Maybe you can give us a bit more on that experience.
My injury was from karate tournament, and it was really a bad one where my patella kneecap totally dislocated. It went from the front of the leg across to the side, and my leg got bent, And it just got me really depressed because this was what I would love to do. And so what do I do now? I'm not just gonna, I don't want to just sit and hop around on my crutches. And the doctors are telling me this is not good. Let's do some surgery. And I was reluctant. And that's when I approached my dad again and I said, okay, well, I want to do some Qigong and some Tai Chi, even though I'm almost unable to do it without crutches. Um, Long story short, months went by, probably like talking maybe 8 months, and I began to feel a change in my leg, and more so a change in my whole being. I was still young, but I endeavored, I persisted, I pursued, I read up, and this change was even more profound. And then I thought, okay, this is something else. I need to go. In those times, there weren't Google. I need to read up some more, which I did. I need to study some more. I need to be with my dad some more and go to those classes. I want to see what it is behind what I'm missing. And after, not sure exactly how long, probably about a year and a couple of months, 4 months, I was able to then execute my movements smooth enough to be able to stand and to be able to flow smooth enough. And I was like, okay, this is I'm sticking with this because it's more than just what you see. There's so many hidden gems in this. Healing my leg, and just besides, healing the leg, there was a sense of peace. There was a sense of well-being. There was a sense of calm. There was a sense of I wanted more. There's more. There's even more to it than meets my eye. And obviously, I had to persist, and it wasn't a quick fix to find those gems. Never quick. Nothing is good comes quick. So that was essentially the start of my journey in this Tai Chi art. And then I had other injuries as well through karate, dislocated shoulder, and put in rough times. Yeah, so all of those are good now, touch wood, and I continue to try to enlighten the kids that I teach, if they're old enough to understand things like that, and enlighten others. I teach at also, by the way, at Barra, which is the third largest hospital in the world. But I'm talking about the surgeons and doctors. I teach them, and it's quite interesting because they are scientific, right? They are. You need proof. There's the proof that works. Whereas Tai Chi, or you're just waving your hand. What are you doing? But they are really loving it, and they see the benefits because they are in a very stressful surrounds, with 70% of the people coming in have stab wounds and gunshots, and you saving lives after life, minute after minute. So it's really highly stressed. So when they can and they make their time, they come and we have a class. We have classes there. So that's quite interesting as well. But having said that, previously, there is now proof. They're doing studies, and there is scientific proof of things like chi, of things like increasing bone density. So, for example, one of my students who's been with me 20 years or so. Elderly, 70, 70s, went for a bone scan. And as you know, as you get older, your bone density in females mainly uh, starts to decrease. And they looked at the result and they said, what have you been doing? Because your bone density has not decreased, nor has it stayed level. It's up 5%. That's a considerable amount. It's up 5%. She says, I don't do anything except Tai Chi. So that's good proof, when you're not only reading about, oh, okay, it increases bone density. Here's living proof. Here's living proof. One of my guys, students, so that's actually it's a very nice story. We know that with all sorts of things like even Alzheimer's, sleep issues, insomnia, stomach problems, there's a whole range, physical and internal. It's got value. And so, yeah.
It's amazing, like you said, when you first saw Tai Chi when you were very young, and these people were just doing slow movements. And you mentioned you weren't mature enough to appreciate it, right? You're like, oh, no, this doesn't make sense. And you went back to karate because karate is more
Mm.
action and punching and
And I can,
active. And then later in life, right?
sorry,
And then
yeah,
later in life,
you go first.
yeah, carry on. No, I was going to say later in life, when you had the injury and then you decided to give Tai Chi a try, and it took a long time, it took months and months and months and, months of consistency and going. And then slowly you realized, oh, okay, there's actually more to this. There's actually deeper. It's not just a slow movement. There's actually something happening with these movements. And that really was like a profound eye opener for you. Yeah, so it's really interesting to hear. So sorry, you had a comment?
Coming back to, with physical, let's say gymming, you do curls, you can see, okay, or you can feel. I can go from 10 to 20 kilo, I can go to 30 now. You can feel it. Tai Chi, you can't feel it necessarily if you're maybe not open to it, but generally you can't, okay, I'm going to 30 kilos. There's no, so, but you may feel a sense of well-being, and that well-being is very important because it's overlooked. Physically, oh yeah, I'm strong, I can feel, but well-being is just like, okay, I feel good. But how important is that? It's very important because when you don't have that well-being, I always say, then you realize, oops, is it too late to have well-being now? Or, you want to always have a sense of that. You can't take it for granted. And studies have shown, there's a couple of studies. There's one interesting, playful one where they looked at a cat, and when a cat grooms itself and it licks and it does that, and they put those electrodes on the head, and they noticed the serotonin levels come up, and that's because of repetition. That it's not only they're grooming, but they're really feeling good because of that same repetition that they're doing over and over. So it equates to you doing movements, you doing the same repetition without getting bored. And this is the thing. People think, okay, that's boring, like myself. You're doing slow, what are you doing? It's boring and you're doing the same thing. And how's that going to work? But if you go beyond that physicalness, there's a gem there that can open up other doors. So that producing serotonin, that's why they groom themselves for a long time because they're having that feel good hormone. And then the other interesting study that they have done was also putting electrodes, and they have a group of people, and group of people that don't do Tai Chi, the normal story, group of people that just sit on the couch, and the group that endeavors for 14-week every day doing Tai Chi, and then they just check their levels, their hormone levels, and increase in feel good hormones. But the other thing that's interesting also is that when we are talking like this, when we are awake, we are conscious, you have your alpha, beta, theta wave. Each have when you go to sleep, you the beta waves come down because you don't need that. And then the theta waves go up, and because that's when your mind rests and you go into that, call it meditative state, for a better, lack of a better word, into that zone where it's mysterious. The body just regenerates. It's regenerating chi. It's collecting information. It's going to all the places where it should regenerate you. And they found that, cutting a long story short, that when the person started doing Tai Chi, immediately those waves, for example, the theta waves, which only come in, I'm not sure if it's theta or beta, but it'll only come in when you're sleeping, because you don't need the other waves. So the meditative or theta waves come in. That theta wave starts climbing as high as the beta while you're doing Tai Chi. So it suggests that your body is starting to rejuvenate because you're in sleep mode, but you're awake. So that is really, I'd say it's quite a breakthrough, because if you look at it, creative people, musicians, they need a certain type of quietness, maybe, and they need non-stress, and they need that wave to kick in order to create music or to paint or to do what they need to do. You can't, you don't just, it just doesn't come. You maybe need to have set your surrounding, and because your surrounding is set, something comes to the fore. So those beta, theta wave, they come to the fore, and that's how you create. That's how you become creative. Let's put it that way. So just by being awake, still doing Tai Chi, all those levels come into play. And how amazing is that? That's quite, yeah.
Wow, that is amazing. I really hope people are understanding the benefits that these martial arts can have, and how the deeper benefits come with time, and you shouldn't just look at the surface. That is actually a much more detail and depth and thought behind what actually goes on. So, guys, I am going to leave all the details to Leo's website. Leo is teaching karate. And I wanted to understand, Leo, the karate you teach, because you said you teach elderly people, people in old age homes, doctors at Baragwanath Hospital, but you also teach little children and probably all bunch of ages in between. So maybe explain to us what you've noticed, how different age groups or different backgrounds of people approach karate, and maybe some insights that you've learned from that. That sounds very interesting.
My youngest child, maybe about 4 years old, can hardly walk, but no, that's when it's really cute. He's really cute, but for and when they come in as well, it's a fun activity requiring your focus, the student's focus, uh, requiring a certain amount of discipline, bringing in a body awareness to them, balance, left, right. I've got a front, I've got a back, I've got legs to walk and to run, I've got a center line, making them aware of all those, especially my my left, right, front, back. And I think it's really beneficial in the sense also that, you know, a lot of children have maybe learning issues and they go to OT, and OTs, they assist them in crossing the midline of their body, crossing with one hand, following with the eyes, crisscross, figure of eight. All those I try to immerse into part of their training. So without realizing they're developing, they are internally, externally, spatially, they're developing without making it too much of a rigid thing where they got to just all the time punch, and you know that'll come later. But from that young age, here's the other thing. Maybe we can, at some stage, where maybe there's enough science to say, okay, we're taking a couple of 4-year-olds and we're going to use them to illustrate. We're going to insert stuff in their body and see if they have or how much they've progressed since 4 till 14 or 18. And we can measure that. I'm just thinking in my head, futuristically, measure that against a person that does normal sports, other sports, and a person that doesn't. And I'll be fascinated to see what increase that martial arts has, a student has, as opposed to the other guys. With all the same good teachers, I'm sure there'll be a big increase. Right now, we can't. Can I say to that 18-year-old that has been with me for 14 years, can I say he's improved 40% on his cognitive and 50% on his mindfulness? And I can't really, because he's come out a nice boy, but that's all we can say, or a nice girl, but we haven't measured that. That'll be an interesting exercise. So that's a little bit on the kids. Then obviously there's challenges. There's some kids which are more hyper, ADD, ADHD, dyslexic, don't know left from right. All those are part of it along the way. Then we get into the early teens, and then the teens, when they're growing now, they're becoming more aware. Hormones are pumping. They present differently. They feel different. They look different. They're starting to exert maybe and have this focus, mental focus, through to adults where they are now challenging and they're now asking a lot of interesting questions about themselves or about whatever they don't understand. So those are all the challenges along the way, and then they get into adulthood where sometimes they stop, and then sometimes they come back because they realize, oh, this was good for me. I'm going to come back, and that's what happens. And then elderly, 30, 40, and then more elderly, 50s, 60s, and maybe the goal is slightly different as when you were a kid. It will be different, I hope, because we grow, right? We change. We change, we mold, we shape, they change, we all change. So the goal shifts sometimes. Your goal changes, and we just adapt to that. So for me, that's very interesting as a teacher. It's not static, even though for the student it might seem, are we doing this again, sensei? Are we doing this again? It's fine. In part, that's kind of endurance and not giving up attitude. And attitude, that plays a big part in when young minds grow up to have a positive outcome, because there will be definitely a time with everyone, I can tell you now, that you're going to come across barriers. And then they're going to say, well, now what, let's give up. When you give up, you don't know what's just beyond that fence, beyond that wall that you there might be a lot of gems there. But so the staying attitude, the never say die attitude, your perseverance is what we try to teach them, because there's going to be blockages during that uphill climb. Even for myself, it never stops, right? You know, there's things that get in the way. There's people that get in your way, and then how does one deal with it? When do you deal with it? How effectively have you dealt with it? Can you look back and say, okay, that was progression, or that was not so good? I can try this way next time. It's all about Tai Chi. It's all about adaptation, fluidity, going with expansion. But yeah, we can. That can be a whole new topic. Sorry, I'm going off.
No, that was good. That was good. So, guys, I am going to leave all the details to Leo's website. You can go check it out, see all the different martial arts that he trains, because Leo teaches karate and Tai Chi, and you have some weapons I've seen, at your studios, right? So you also teach a wide range of different skills. So I'm going to leave all those details. You can check it out there. Leo, you have anything else to say as we're closing up?
No, I mean, there could be other things I could say, but it might take another some time. But I think we've covered an area of interest, uh, and there may be for another time some other areas of interests. But yeah, I've got a qigong video that one can get online, and it will be on my website for a minimal amount. I've got, like I say, the book. The book you can order through me, contact me rather, because if you order it from overseas, Barnes and Noble, it's just coming in the immigration, and not immigration, but when they bring it in, the fees are quite high. So, and then I give retreats now and again, all over, and hopefully I can share my whatever I've learned, whatever little I've learned, to people.
Yeah, no, we're very grateful that you are teaching so many people these very important arts, because the young people, middle-aged people, we all need to learn these skills that can help us just navigate life better. And I think that's really what Tai Chi, karate, martial art really does, is it helps you navigate the challenges of life, just gets you understanding what life is all about, and just makes you more wholesome, I feel. And that's what I've noticed by observing these people that do martial arts. They just seem a little bit more calm and chilled, and that they can handle situations very confident. And that's just like a feeling that I get, by looking at a person who's done no martial arts, and maybe who's somebody who's done it for a long time. You just get this feeling that the martial artist person is a lot more confident and calm.
Yeah, it's a paradox, isn't it? It's you learn how to fight in order not to fight, because when you understand other things, you don't want to, because it's not a good thing to. I mean, if you look for it, you will find it, but it's not a good thing to fight, because there's so many reasons why I can tell you, but it is a paradox.
Leo, we really appreciate your time, and we look forward to the future where we will cover another topic in depth like this. But until then, take care.